Hello everyone, how are you doing? Welcome to another video. Hope you're having a great day so far. This is a video targeting Demoscene people, newcomers to the Demoscene that just starting doing programming of graphics things. They want to know how to synchronize those graphic effects or scenes to some audio. A couple of people asked me the different ways to do this in terms of technology available and the best practices, the common practices that people do in the Demoscene. So I try to do this video summarizing some of those points and some of the caveats, also some recommendation demos for you to check, demos that have good synchronization, in my humble opinion at least. So yeah, that's the plan for this video. I'm going to try to make it short. Probably gonna be about half an hour. Let's see how we end up. So first question, what are the usual ways to sync audio and visuals on a demo? Well, the best way usually is to use the BPM, the bits per minute. On old school platforms, you probably are playing tracked music or a mod file, or you're coding the audio by hand. Both of them have some way of having the BPM. If you're playing an MP3, you can also determine what the BPM is by either tapping along with it and trying to find the right time signature for it, or using a DAW. There are some DAW programs or DJ programs who automatically try to detect the BPM of the track, or just ask the musician who did the music for you what is the BPM of the track. They usually know it. The advantages of going by the BPM is that most music is about repeating patterns. That's what music is. That's the definition of music. It's a sound that repeats itself in some way or shape or form. So they have this fixed tempo signatures. Of course, some music can change tempo throughout the music. But most tracks tend to be fixed tempo. So this means that if you synchronize things every 4 beats or every 16 beats to the beats per minute, you are going to end up with following up the structure of the song pretty much on point, more or less. Sometimes you might have to give a little or not and adapt, but it's a good initial starting point to do that. So a lot of demos, you can see that they just figured out the BPM, they divided it by 4 or 16 or something like that, and they call that each of those like a scene or a part or a section. And then they decide, no, I need 4 sections for this scene, I need 8 sections for this scene, or I can put something white flashing on the screen every 4 beats, and that will synchronize to the bass drum. So that's the most bare minimum way to synchronize some things. Of course, there are some problems with it. The main one is when the tempo changes either within the track, or you get a new version of the track that's slightly faster. You need to resync everything on the code by hand. So it's not very nice for complex songs. When you need more intricate things, you end up having to have more, or when it's like not completely matching the pattern, there's like some disruptive thing happening in the middle that's not right on the end of the phrase. I think it's the official term for it. Then you need to break pattern, so it can be weird. Size coding uses this a lot as well, because it's the most easiest thing to code. Instead of having a lot of if-thens, you just get your time and then you divide it into, or do a remainder division, so a modulo of some things, and that usually gives you like a loop that you can reuse on some things. You can count those kind of loops if you have a wider modulo. And you can use that for do the different scene transitions as well. So that's a very common trick for size coding. It's a very easy way to get your transitions and split things into multiple scenes. The other way to synchronize things is to do it manually. Just have a timer on the screen, see when it's hitting that timer, put an if time is bigger than this, then do something. If it's smaller than that, do something else. This can get very chaotic very fast. So if it's a very basic demo, you can get away with it. If it's starting to get complex, not so easily. So you end up usually having to either read time signatures from a text file, or sometimes you can even export some markers from the WAV file. some DAW support. I remember we used to do that in Audacity and what was it, Cool Edit. Back then, you could put some markers and then export those markers and read from that. But usually you end up with a text file of some sort or a JSON file nowadays to be more automatically validated if it's a proper file or not. And you just try to say the name of the thing that you're trying to match and the time signature that's supposed to start and supposed to end. You can use it for the global scene transitions. You can use it for something smaller within the same scene. Different possibilities as well. An old trick that you used to do is to synchronize things by hand. You would write some code that will listen for when you hit the space bar and set a marker and save it to a text file by then. So you just, as you see the demo happening, you would hit the space bar different times when you want some stuff syncing happening on screen, and then you would use that. So that's useful when it's not like a repetitive pattern, when something more slightly erratic that doesn't match the BPM. You can use the spacebar for that as well, or just general feeling for when you need to cut to the next scene when the scene is taking too long. Nowadays, you can also scrub the timeline back and forth and restart the music at the specific time, so it's easier to adjust things if you do it by that. We don't really use the spacebar technique that much ever since the last time we used it was in like 2000 or something like that, so 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. There are some synchronization tools that were developed in the Demoscene as well to do some synchronization stuff. I'm talking about gnurocket, also got renamed to Rocket. Imported to a lot of different platforms, uses WebSockets to communicate, and the idea is that you have a tracker-like interface to define when things happen and what variables you're changing, you're affecting the values. This comes from the old idea that on some tracker formats, you could use the effects column to affect the audio side of things, and some coders would use those effects as well to change stuff in the code. So that was the original idea. You could trigger the effects there. So they thought that they could reuse this in a more modern way and do like a dedicated tracker for that. And once you are done with all those changes, you save it, and then you can include everything into your source code directly. So you don't have the player lying around, you just have the end result of the things. Very clean way, a lot of people use it. I haven't really used it much, but I heard a lot about it, and it's pretty reliable and ported to all sorts of different platforms as well. You can use it on Amiga, you can use it for JavaScript, for browser demos, for normal native C++ demos. A lot of different platforms support it. Then you can also try to do your own timeline system, which is not all that complicated when you know what you're doing. Just need a list of all the different variables that you have, put them on a nice thing that you can scrub back and forth. Way to add more variables as you note them. Be able to zoom in and out to adjust the things if you want to use a mouse. Maybe be able to add some curves. You can even use some standard interpolation formulas to do those kind of transitions and reuse those in multiple ways. A few people did this for this. The most recent one that I saw was made by Observers called Automaton for JavaScript demos. There are a few different versions of this. Demopaya had a very similar thing as well. It's an old demo tool made by Moppy Productions. There are quite a few different demo engines that have this approach. Other things that you can do to synchronize sound is use the FFT, Fourier transformation on the audio, to have how the different frequencies change. So you have a whole full buffer of information for all the different frequencies that you have, and you can see how the different ones work, which can be useful for a lot of small things. It also can be very hard to get it right. Don't know exactly what frequency you're looking for and in what way you're going to use it, how it attenuates. So it has very specific use cases which are sometimes hard to fine tune, but we'll talk about it a little bit more later. I have a whole section dedicated to talking about FFT. It also depends a lot on what platform you're targeting. Sometimes there are already some demo tools available, as I mentioned, Rocket and Automaton, but there are a few other things as well that exist. Also, if you're generating the audio yourself, you already have the shape of what the audio is, and you already know when the audio is going to be triggered. So you can do a lot of synchronization out of that as well automatically. But also a lot of people, especially doing more native C++ demos, just survive by just having imgui and using the mouse wheel. You know, you have imgui on the corner over here, and with a slider that you can adjust the value of what you're trying to fine tune. And maybe have a timeline on the bottom that you can scrub back and forth on your demo timeline, and you can quickly go to the place where you're trying to preview your demo and adjust the values there. Some more advanced demo tools have a completely real-time preview thing, so you can code, change stuff, and it automatically recompiles, and you see it immediately on the preview. Real time, you can add different modifiers to things and you see the things changing real time. This is very convenient for you to be able to immediately see what you're doing. Workzoid is a very good example of that. They always had like the preview there in the corner. Some modern game engines also do that nowadays. You know, Unity also has that preview thing, although it has some limitations. You always have to do an informed decision if you want to be able to change all the values immediately, or if you want to leave it as a sandbox for you to play around with, and then you have to re-implement all of those values, put them in the right places again after you stopped what you're doing. But having that real-time preview instead of, you know, recompiling your code, skipping to the time that you're watching and making sure that things are timed. If you have a real-time preview, it's a lot faster to do all those kind of synchronization things. Also, sometimes just looking at your audio file, noting down all the milliseconds that things happen on, you can get a lot done just by doing that. You sometimes you don't need a full timeline to do everything. You can just code everything manually. There's a very interesting interview that I did with Navis and deepr where they talked a little bit about that. Navis just had found, I'll put the link on the description, of course. Navis talks a little bit about using MIDI controllers to have different variables available, and he can sort of like even record stuff live and change things as the demo progresses. So he actually like VJs the demo things. And this is not a new approach. Other people have done that in the past. I remember I think it was Stravaganza that did a similar thing with their demo tool / VJ tool, or was it the guys from 3 Pixels before Mr. Doob became so focused on the web. One of them used to do them. So it's usually a lot of Demoscene tools end up being VJ tools as well, and they always end up with having this thing of being able to assign MIDI controllers and record the thing and automate the changes on those things that you can jam live, but also record what happens and then have like a timeline of what you did with the thing that you can, you know, re-export. I think Zden from Satori also has a similar thing with this tool, although from what he told me, he usually uses the tool to fool around with some effects, trying to figure out some ideas, and then he re-implements everything from scratch on his own code. But yeah, MIDI controllers quite good. deepr, on that interview that I did with Navis and deepr also talks about their own version of Rocket, which they did it to extend to have hundreds of variables available, and then they could add and hide different things. He talks about that in depth, and yeah, as I mentioned, Rocket is a good tool for you to use. So definitely check out that interview. That has a very interesting insight. Controlling things on a previous window, I already talked about this. Some example of demos with good synchronization. So these are the first demos that came to the top of my head. They might not be your cup of tea, they might not be your definition of good synchronization, but for me they are, so I wanted to share them, and maybe for some newcomers to the demo scene, these might be interesting references. I know they helped me getting more in touch with the right way to sync things, even if I'm not, you know, completely an expert in that, but I do have some 20-something years of experience on that front. So some demos that had very interesting synchronization. Orange were one of the first groups that I remember having a very good synchronization on their productions. Robot series was very good in terms of synchronization. These Bab for me is a classic. Secret Life of Mr. Robot as well, of Mr. Black is also very much on point in like scene synchronization and having stuff matching with what's happening in the scene itself. So very good reference. Then Haitao Flow is like a seminal piece in synchronization as well, like minimalistic look and feel, but very well synchronized with the music. MFX are also complete legends in terms of synchronization. Their demos, their old 90s stuff like Tripfish, Within Minutes, those two, they had excellent synchronization. Universe series, the Fire Upon the Deep also had very Deepness in the Sky, Ultimatum to the World, like such basic scenes, but the synchronization really brings the stuff to life. And even their more modern productions, if you check the more modern MFX demos, they are more techno focused. They have excellent synchronization, like the pacing, the variance, like it doesn't get boring. So very good lessons that you can learn from watching those. Satori, as I already mentioned, they always have very good attention to synchronization. I remember Tau, I remember Insight, I remember Metamorph. All of these three were very on point with synchronization, masterclass in that. Another Demoscene that I really respect for synchronizing things is EL, Czech scener, if I'm not mistaken, or Slovakian scener. And he always had like everything extremely well synchronized and on point to a ridiculous degree. His music was usually IDM experimental kind of sounds, but it was always very well synchronized, and I really loved his aesthetic. Other production in the Demoscene, visual approach to the aesthetics of techno also explains you the basics of how to synchronize stuff visually. For techno in particular. Other productions that did this more over-the-top use, Glitch by Kuhlers did very good use of FFT and some variations on that. It's pretty much a remake of Ganz Graf, but Ganz Graf takes it to another level. Like Ganz Graf, it's a masterclass on synchronizing. It is a video, it's not real time, but the synchronization on that is just amazing. Like the degree of complexity, the different layers that has, like Otek has so many different things happening at the same time. It's like it's so chaotic sort of music, and the video really reflected that very well. And talking about commercial artists that have very on-point synchronization, which you could probably learn a lot of, and it's influenced some Demoscene works in one way or another. Otak Ganz Graf, I already mentioned. Venetian Snares, Szamar Madar, a very good track and very on point, like drill and bass, but very well, tightly synchronized stuff. Chemical Brothers Star Guitar, also very seminal production that has to be addressed, having the visuals happening, the train scene, and then everything happening according to the music. Very surreal, very interesting as well. Back to Demoscene productions that are tightly synchronized. Kolonia, Kozmoplovsky, very on-point synchronization, very basic demo, but the synchronization really makes it work. A hidden gem, Dishes, Ham, Ketchup, and Kittens by Lobsters and Matt Current. Also extremely tight synchronization, very Matt Current-like everything so on point. Very basic demo, but very well synchronized, and it's like a little bit of a tribute to demos that were being made in the early 2000s as well, with like the tight synchronization and in-your-face attitude. Chaos Theory from Conspiracy, also 64K, that became very known for being very well synchronized. Also, I found a tag on Demozoo that focuses on this called Extreme Sync, so check out that tag as well if you want to see more Extreme Sync productions. Didn't have that many productions added. I'll have to add a few more there, but the ones that it did had was good reminders for me while composing this list. The Rainbow Clash series by Sly Spy as well is extremely ridiculously highly synchronized thing. There's so many things happening at the same time. It's real, like if you see a screenshot of the work files that Sly Spy has for the tool, it's ridiculous. Like the amount of little things that change all the time. It's really, really interesting. Also, the work from Still Pixtor does excellent work with synchronization, mostly about design and flow and knowing when to change scenes. He does a very good job with that, and is also very worth mentioning. I also wanted to mention Every Way by Hoffman, because it really shows how when you have a musician in charge of synchronizing things on your demo, it brings another depth to it, because they already have some visual ideas on how the sound appears on space, and that translates very well to visuals afterwards. So yeah, Every Way by Hoffman, also a very must-see in terms of synchronization. Other things worth mentioning, Prism Beings also has usually very good synchronization stuff. I'm talking about Absolute Territory, which was a little bit of an homage to Ryoji Keda, which is another commercial project that has disturbingly high attention to synchronization and everything being like surgically placed. Not just in the audio spectrum in terms of panning and stereo position and frequency ranging, but also all the visual work that he ever did was always very high synchronization. And watching his concerts, you have a high synchronized experience happening as well. And Absolute Territory was re-implementing Ryoji Keda's music pretty much, and with a very basic visual scene, but the synchronization itself was very on point. Another counterpoint also by Prism Beings that will lead me into another important section related to synchronizing is Whaley. Whaley is a very slow-paced demo, but even slow-paced things need proper synchronization even more, because when you are slow-paced, you need to have things exactly on point. It can't be too early or too late, or you start feeling a little dissonance on the whole project. It's one of the critiques that I did to another of the groups that I wanted to mention, Umlaut Design, like Pile Driver in the Box, excellent synchronization things. But Garguy made this demo about slow-paced ambience, and the syncing on it felt off to me. And I can't explain why. It's just a feeling that I have. When I'm watching it, it feels like, okay, this scene should have been longer. This one is too long. And I have that feeling with a lot of, well, not a lot, some of the Demoscene productions, that it just feels a bit off. Like when they are cutting the scene feels a bit off. Have that problem a lot with a lot of Smash demos as well. Like the demos are usually very good technically, but then it just feels like the flow just feels weird and not on point, which for me is bad syncing, but you know, it's also subjective. Syncing is very subjective at the end of the day. So the ultimate advice that I have for newcomers, keep it simple. Less is usually more. It's better to have less and be lacking on synchronizations than having too many synchronizations and just be a mess that you can't really understand what's happening. So less is more. Don't try to cram too much stuff in. Usually the problem that happens with newcomers is that they don't really, when it's your first demo, you don't really pay that much attention to the music. It's something that you usually slap on last minute, and you don't have time to synchronize anything at all. But we'll talk about that in a little while from now. What's the advice to newcomers? So keep it simple. Less is usually more. First, you should think of what the direction and pace that you want for your demo, and for the different scenes in the demo. If you have in your mind what sort of pacing and aesthetic that you want for your demo, it's a lot easier to synchronize things, because then you know immediately that, okay, this scene has been going too long and I need more movement in here to make it more chaotic, or I need less movement, I need less things synchronized. So you need to have some sort of vision, and it's okay if you don't have one initially. But once you figure out the vision that you have for your demo overall, revisit the synchronization, and you might realize that, okay, maybe I'm synchronizing too much on this part, and it doesn't really need to be that synchronized. It's one of the other problems that the usual mistakes that you sometimes do, is that you over synchronize things. The other advice that I have is to trust your instinct. Like, if you watch the demo and it feels right, then it's right. You can't please everyone. Try to please yourself. Be true to your vision, to your idea, and then try to target that and do that and accomplish that vision. And you might need to pivot at some point. It's not working, I'm going to try something else. That's also fair. That also happens in a lot of times. Or it might just be a mess at the end of the day, and you're not very happy with the synchronization, but at least you learn something out of it. So but yeah, try to trust your own instincts and shape your own instincts as you do that, instead of relying on what you think other people will like. So, common rookie mistakes in synchronizing, as I was mentioning. Most common rookie mistake is leaving the music for last minute and then not having time to synchronize anything at all, which makes for a bad thing. You should try to fit the music as well as the visuals, or match them as much as possible. Usually make the visuals around the music, or the music around the visuals, and not just let them float around to be a last minute thing. And then the other thing is that you usually, when you learn how to synchronize things, it's easy to start wanting to sync every single little thing that happens, every sound, and you end up syncing everything that doesn't even need to be synced. You're just syncing it because the previous scene was also a highly synced, and I want to have everything synced now. So all the cubes must move to a beat, and all the things must flash to that other sound. And sometimes it's just nonsensical. It doesn't really make much sense. There's no purpose, there's no motive, there's no direction behind it, and it just makes for a messy demo that for me is not particularly interesting. Might still enjoy it, some people might still enjoy it, but most of the demos that I've seen made that way, they weren't very memorable, and I don't really watch them again. The other common rookie mistake that you usually do is not realizing they are too used to the demo, too inside of what the demo is in their head. They don't see the demo as you would see it for the first time. When you're watching something for the first time, you don't have the context of the whole thing. So you have to introduce the person to where they're supposed to be going, or lead them or hint them into that thing. And if I've been working on the demo for so long, you lose that perspective. So it's a nice skill that you need to master as you make more demos, is try to have a clean slate and just, forget that I ever saw this demo. What is happening now? What is this making me think of? What am I leading? And sometimes you start lying to yourself that you think this is working, and it's really not working. To this day, I still make that mistake in some demos. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you assume a lot of things that end up, you will lose most of your audience with those assumptions. But it's one of the earliest mistakes that you usually do as a new demo scener. And another of the usual mistakes that you usually do is just I do a scene, and then I do another scene, and then I'll put another scene, and the music is changing, but you're not really following what the music does, because you just want to have scenes happening, and the music is just background. So that's the worst that you can do. It's like you're not having respect for the music, and you're not having respect for the demo itself. You're just using the music as background. And demos work a lot better when they work in touch, the visuals with the audio. because it's easy to just put something playing on the background. It's hard to make it fit and to tell the same story with both, so it's complementary. One should complement the other, not just, be a companion, but complement. And it can be very hard in the beginning to get that mentality. You need need to watch a lot of demos and movies and things like that, and think about how audio works in the visuals, or how visuals can how the visual direction can work, can complement the audio. So it's a bit of a learning curve on that, but that's also one of the most easier mistakes to make early on when you're starting to make new demos. Another question that I have a lot is about FFT. Like usually FFT, like if you want to have very synchronized graphics, so everything you usually need FFT analysis, so you have a better control of the different frequencies and things like that. Is it essential for good synchronizations? I would say no. It has its use cases, very good use cases, but you also need to know what you're doing and fine-tune it accordingly. So most of the times I think FFT is an overkill and you don't need it for doing major syncs of the demo. A timeline would often suffice in doing that job and allow you to control things in a more intuitive manner. FFT is mostly useful when you want something to react quantitatively to something that is not regular enough for you to just code it every 4 beats or fake it with some random noise value. If it's a push into something, you're rotating something, and when a beat comes, you need to push it a little bit more. That can be easily faked to just, increase the bump whenever the beat comes. But if it's an erratic beat without being 4/4, then it can be very hard to sync. So in that case, for example, FFT can be a good thing. You can find the right frequency where the bass drum is hitting, and whenever that happens, bump it for that amount of thing. So that's one use case that it can be useful, but there are a lot of caveats for using FFT. First one is knowing exactly what frequency you want to use, or combination of frequencies. Some sounds you have a variety of spectrum. They're not focused on a single frequency. So it can be hard to match FFT, for example, for voice recognition things. When you want a mouth to move along with the FFT, can be particularly hard. You need to know very well what you're doing. It's not just pick a frequency where the speech is happening and it will automatically work. It will look a bit weird. It will look a bit off. Some things that can be useful for is like for crackling sounds, for like when you have like static electricity going. You can focus down on that exactly frequency and have that shimmer something, and it will look very much on point, which would be very hard for you to code down on. Those were some of the examples that I've seen to use FFT more properly in some of the demos that even I've made. You can also use it to activate a more chaotic mode in your demo. So use it like as a threshold of when things go to another level or can have more sort of variation. I also use that a lot, and you can do some very interesting generative demos with that. As well, like it only shows 1 or 2 images when it's not as erratic, and when things start becoming more erratic, you can range between 6 images or something like that. So you can do some small tricks like that, but usually it's like defining a threshold, and when you pass that threshold, you activate something or you do something else. And you can have several different states in between as well, something like that, or changing to another scene. You have a lot of activity, you will be changing scenes very fast. You can also put a timer on that. So you can do a lot of small things, but I'll leave that as an exercise. The problem with FFT is that you need to map for the right frequencies that you want, and you need to tweak the attenuation of the build-up that you're doing. Like sometimes the direct FFT value it changes very much during the same second, and you want to have a medium value of what just happened on the last, 1 second or something like that, and you need to attenuate it somehow. So there are a lot of different techniques to do those things. It can be a bit annoying to spend some time writing that kind of code, but it can also be fun to see how things start getting slightly better synced as you do these changes. So yeah, this is the video I wanted to make. 45 minutes, so long enough. Hope it was useful. Let me know if you have any particular questions on any particular techniques or something like that. If you need more references than the stuff that I just dumped on the description text. Other than that, hope you have a great day. Please make more demos, especially for Initial Demo Party. It's happening 1, 2, 3 of December 2023. It's giving me a lot of work organizing it, so I do very much appreciate it that you would submit something, either in person or remotely. So yeah, see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great day.